Many people say they're on a mission to change the world. Few people have done it to the extent that my guest today has. Dr. Sailesh Rao, founder of climatehealers.org, is a man on a mission. Dr. Rao has over 3 decades of professional experiences and is the founder and executive director of Climate Healers, a nonprofit dedicated towards healing the Earth's climate. A systems specialist with a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University, Dr. Rao worked on the internet communications infrastructure for 20 years after graduation. During this period, he blazed the trail for high-speed signal processing chips and technologies for high-definition television, real-time video communications, and the transformation of early analog internet connections to more robust digital connections. All that changed when he discovered what was really going on with the environment, with the climate, with factory farming, with people's health, and what he could actually do to make a change. He made a promise to his granddaughter when she was 5 years old. He calls it the Pinky Promise, where he promised that he would do everything in his power to make the world vegan by 2026. Today, we're going to talk about his philosophy, when he went vegan, why he's so passionate about what he's doing, and why now it has to be the time that we all make a positive change towards being vegan. So welcome to the show. Stick around. You're in for a great treat.
Welcome to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, where your host, Kathleen Gage, shines the spotlight on vegan and plant-based businesses and entrepreneurs from all walks of life committed to cruelty-free eating, healthy lifestyles, animal compassion, and the environment. Enjoy the show.
I have to say that I am beyond honored and humbled today with sharing my next expert with you, which is Dr. Rao, and he is with the climatehealers.org. That's climatehealers.org. I'm going to encourage everybody to go over there as quickly as possible, but wait for the interview because he's going to cover a lot of great information. And we especially want to talk about the cow in the room, because right now there's a cow in the room. Used to be the elephant, but elephants are becoming extinct. So it's the cow in the room, and we really need to address this. So, Doctor, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Kathleen.
So let's start with, have you always been vegan? I think that would be the first question I have.
Good question. No, I wasn't. I was raised vegetarian. And so for the first 48 years of my life, I was vegetarian. And I consumed dairy and eggs. If they were already in processed form, I would consume them. I wouldn't consume eggs directly. But in 2008, I saw the devastation that the dairy industry was having on the planet. Because I was in a village in Rajasthan, India. And I saw all these old cows walking around eating up the forest. And there was nothing left for the deer to eat. And then the deer dies. When the deer dies, the tiger dies. So I could see the cascading effect of raising cows was having on the ecosystems of that region. So I went vegan on the spot when I saw that.
Mm-hmm. And I know that when you saw Al Gore's film or you heard him speak, that had a big impact on you. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm a systems engineer by training, and I was working on the internet back in the 90s. And in 2005, I was working on making the same internet connections 10 times faster, so 10 gigabit Ethernet. And I came home one day and I sat down on my sofa and I turned on the TV, and there was Al Gore talking about climate change. He called it global warming at that time. And I was rooted to my seat. I couldn't take my eyes off it. And, the more I listened to him, the more I realized it is the biggest systems problem around. And so I told my wife, if half of what he's saying is true, I'm wasting my time. Mm-hmm. And so she said, if you think it's that important, why don't you study it? So that's how I got into it, and within a few months, I realized it's far worse than what he's saying. So I wrote to Mr. Gore and I said, how can I help you? And that's how I got into it. And then I closed my company and I decided to focus on the environment full time.
And it's so interesting because with what you're doing, you actually gave up a very lucrative career. You, I believe, graduated from Stanford University, PhD. You've got so much knowledge in education and training, and you had a very successful company. If I'm not mistaken, over 1 billion people are directly, it's a direct result of what you created, that they are using the systems that you created many years ago. So it wasn't as if you had nothing better to do. You really had to make some sacrifices, which in hindsight really are not sacrifices, because you're one of the most influential voices in the industry and the world, really bringing awareness to the climate issues. So with the creation of climatehealers.org, tell us about that, what the premise of the organization is, and then I really want to dig into what happened at COP26.
Sure. Yeah. The idea behind Climate Healers was to help the world reverse climate change. Because the more I heard the way climate change was being talked about, I felt like there was something totally wrong, in the way we are framing it. Everyone talks about making sure that the temperature does not go over 1.5 degrees from where it's at, where it was supposed to be. That's like going to a doctor with a fever of 1 degree Celsius, and the doctor says, I'll make sure it doesn't go over 1.5 degrees. I mean, you would think that doctor is an idiot, right? You wouldn't go back to him. You want him to reverse your fever. And that's what I wanted everyone to be talking about. How would you reverse this? How would you reverse climate change? And no one talks about it, right? Even Joe Biden, President Biden, when he talks about it, he's saying the best we can do is to prevent it from getting much worse. And I'm saying, no, that's not true. It's not true because you're ignoring the cow in the room. That's why you think that there is no way out. That we have to prevent it from getting much worse. Actually, you can reverse it. So I wanted to focus our nonprofit, Climate Healers, on how to reverse climate change, how to bring the temperature back to where it was a couple of 100 years ago, and to maintain it there. Because as soon as we admit that we are causing climate change, we have automatically assumed responsibility as a species to maintain it, because it's no one else's fault if the climate goes haywire. It's our fault because we have the thermostat for the planet in our hands, whether we like it or not.
So how feasible is it for the general public to really embrace that kind of thinking? Because whenever I go to the grocery store, for example, and I see carts full of meat and people that are dealing with obesity and obviously disease, and they're not connecting the dots that what they have in their cart is directly responsible not only for their health or lack thereof, but also what's happening with the environment. And I do a lot with animal rescue, and it never ceases to amaze me. The people that are rescuing animals are eating animals. And it's like, so how feasible is it that the majority of people will actually embrace that, or is it?
Well, it is feasible if our system addresses it. Okay, honestly, I mean, when I worked on several systems, like the internet. When I worked on the internet, we look at systems and we put everything on the table and we say, how would we solve this problem, right? And we haven't yet done that with climate change, because with climate change we are sort of positioning it to figure out how do we stay within the current model. Instead of saying, what do we need to do to address it? What do we need to do to solve it? Okay. And once we address it honestly, we can tell people, that what they're eating is going to make them sick. Our government doesn't tell them that now. Our government is actually subsidizing animal foods, and they are promoting animal foods to children. I mean, they're making children consume dairy when they know that people of color are lactose intolerant, most of them. So it's a completely racist system that we have created, and we are perpetuating it, right? And they need to be called out on it, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm saying if we are really honest about addressing the systems issue that we face today, we would be telling people the truth. And if you start telling people the truth, they will make their own decisions. You don't have to force them, right? You can tell them the truth and they will make their own decisions as to what they need to be doing.
Well, one thing I really appreciate about when you do presentations, because I watched quite a few of yours from the whole COP26, and you bring in a lot of facts and figures. You bring in the science, if you will. You really have information to back up what you're saying instead of just saying we need to make changes. You give actual facts and figures. And I would love for you to share where people can find the information on your website that has actual data that will let them know that we're in a crisis right now.
Yeah, all of my data is on climatehealers.org, and you can look under the science tab on the education tab, and you will see a compilation of all our research work. And then the latest campaign that we did was the cowintheroom.org. So if you go to the cowintheroom.org, it's actually a microsite under Climate Healers, and it shows how in 4 different aspects we are ignoring animal agriculture. Mm-hmm. And they all have to do with human well-being. First is, of course, climate change, and then the cow represents methane emissions, and the greenhouse gas impacts of animal agriculture. And then we have a chicken who represents pandemics because she's wearing a mask. And so even though we know that pandemics come from animals, we are treating slaughterhouses as critical infrastructure, and we are ignoring the link with pandemics, and between consuming animal foods and pandemics. I mean, it was to me mind-blowing to watch people at COP26 walking around all the time with masks on their faces and then going to the cafeteria and eating animal foods.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense that they would do that, right? The third animal is the pig. We call him Obi the pig, and he represents obesity. So you can see he's all puffed up, and he's saying, even for human health, we don't talk about animal foods and the impact that animal foods have on our human health, right? We try to address it with drugs instead of saying, just change your diet and you can overcome this. That is the cow in the room, or that's the pig in the room, so to speak.
And why is that? I have my own theory, and I've done a lot of research, and I know that there's a lot of money involved in, connected with keeping people sick, with big pharma, with corporations. I mean, there's a lot of people in bed together that, they're filling each other's pockets. And
right.
It's so shocking that it's so evident, and yet they won't do anything to change it, even though they're dying as much as anybody else and they're as sick as anybody else. And I think having Eric Adams now as the mayor of New York is going to make a huge difference. And as we get more vegans to really speak out, but what can individuals do? So now you have your organization and you're doing so much with Cow in the Room, and I definitely want to dig deeper into that. But let's start with what the average citizen can do. They're maybe watching this podcast, or they're listening to it, or they heard one of your presentations during COP26, and they're saying, okay, I'm ready to do something. What do they do? What's the first step?
Absolutely. So the number one thing is get educated, understand, the source of these problems that you're facing, and then go vegan as quickly as possible. I mean, you will see that is the solution to a lot of these problems. Okay. So when we start treating animals as if they belong on Earth along with us, that they have every right to be on Earth, just like we do, then you are going to address the system at its roots. So I think someone said that, for every 1,000 men who are hacking at the branches of evil, there is one who is hacking at the roots. If you want to hack at the roots of evil, it's go vegan. It's as simple as that. Because the current system is based on exploiting animals. It's a game we are playing. Okay. So it's through games and stories that we coordinate our actions among millions and billions of us. And so the game of money and the rules of the game of money make us do the things we do. It's got nothing to do with us, our character, or anything like that. It's the rules of the game that make us do that. Okay. And so as a system designer, I know that if we change the rules of the game and we create a new game, we can actually make people behave differently, because they're going to be playing a different game. They're also going to try and win in that game. Okay. That's okay. But in that game, you win when you're compassionate. So you can create a game in which the more compassionate you are, the more resources you get. In the current game, the more psychopathic you are, the more resources you get. So it bubbles up psychopathy.
Interesting. So with your organization, now what year did you start the organization climatehealers.org?
2007.
2007. And what has it grown into? How big is the organization? How extensive is your reach? And then I want to talk about where you see it going.
Yeah, the Climate Healers organization, initially, I was trying to do things. And then I realized I better step back and study the problem more intensely before I try to do things. Like what Einstein said, right? If he's given 24 hours to solve a problem, he'll think about it for 23 hours and then solve it in the last hour, right? That's exactly what I did after my initial missteps. I mean, I did some work in the villages of India, and I realized that I was actually polluting their villages instead of actually helping them. So I was, this was the solar cooker project that I had started. And so then I abandoned it and I said, okay, I'm going to step back and study it more. And then I started focusing more and more on veganism, because that turned out to be the major issue the more I studied it, right? So it has been 15 years of compiling research, okay, and understanding the system that has brought us to where we are, and to understand how do we change the system. Okay. Now we have thousands of volunteers. So it's an organization that is built entirely on volunteers, and we have volunteers from all over the world, okay, who come in and out and help us do different things. So we have convergences that happen every 3 months, and our next convergence is going to happen end of January. And basically, in the convergences, we come together and we decide what next step can we take to advance our cause. Our cause right now is to get to a vegan world by 2026. Mm-hmm. That's a specific goal that we have put, and saying we're going to have to do everything we can to achieve that. Because and it's about when you say a vegan world by 2026, it's going to actually change everything. You have to change the political system, the education system, the social system, the cultural, everything will change when you have a vegan world, right? Yeah.
So, with that change, because actually I had the opportunity to speak at the last convergence. I did a presentation on getting on podcast shows and taking the message out that way. And I want to throw my hat in for the next one too, because I love what you're doing. And as we think about the urgency, there's 5 years before 2026.
Right.
In addition to going vegan, what can people do on a social level to get involved, to, whatever it may be? Because it was Jane Velez Mitchell who said we all are advocates in our own way, whatever it is we do. And it was Paige Parsons Roach who introduced me to you. And, it's kind of like people really want to get the word out. So what could the average citizen do beyond going vegan to get involved in your organization, to get involved in getting the message out?
Yeah, join Climate Healers newsletter. So we send out a newsletter every week, and then you can join our convergences. And I say, once you go vegan, you have to become active. So you have to become active in your circles, in your networks. You can tell them why you're going vegan, and usually people will resonate with what made you go vegan. Okay, and then they will also start thinking along those lines and see what they need to do. So it's about spreading the word and getting more and more people to join the movement. And then there is a lot of work to be done in building a new system of normalized nonviolence, because we have a system of normalized violence right now.
Absolutely.
So we have a system where we are actually extracting 6 times as much food as we really need from the planet in terms of total weight. So we are extracting 9 billion tons of food from the planet, even though we only eat 1.5 billion tons. And yet 1 billion people are going hungry. You ask, so what the heck happened? This is the worst engineering management that I've seen. The food system is one of the worst managed system, from an engineering perspective, because any engineer would be able to tell you how to distribute the food so that everyone is fed.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we are doing now is we are taking most of that food, 7.3 billion tons, feeding it to animals, and then chopping them up, and they give us only 0.19 billion tons of food, and then we fight over that.
Right.
And and then people are going hungry. So we have to create a new system of normal nonviolence, which is actually normal for us.
Yeah,
right?
and I want to talk about the nonviolence because I read Dr. Will Tuttle's book, World Peace Diet. I've had him on the show. Read Diet for a New America. John Robbins wrote that, and it talks about the energy of putting dead animals into our body and how people become violent as a result of that. And you think about the people working in the factory farms, how they may go in with the best of intentions of, I just need a job, but they become very sadistic. And I think it's just, spiritually they're shutting down because that's their survival mechanism. So what are some things that people can do on that level to really encourage nonviolence? Because one is, I know, turn off the TV, because that they pound that into us. But I just so appreciate what you're doing and the awareness you're bringing, that anything I can do to help you spread the word, I am so committed to that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Kathleen. I'm saying that the most important thing we need to be doing now is to feed our fellow humans healthy, immune-boosting vegan food. Okay? No one should go hungry. No one. So let's address. See, there are like 17 Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has created. And they want all those goals to be met by 2030. Okay, that's their goal. And I'm saying, when I have 17 goals, I will pick one of those goals and actually meet them. Why don't we do that with goal number 2, which is zero hunger? And let's make sure that we get healthy food to every human being on the planet. Okay. And once we start eating healthy food and no one goes hungry, then we are able to think more clearly. Because if you think about it, what has happened is actually something absolutely amazing. So we as a species, we were all in Africa 50,000 years ago. Okay. And then we spread out of Africa in the last ice age and went to every part of the world. And then when the Earth came out of the ice age 10,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago, we started agriculture. And we actually held the temperature constant by doing agriculture and by raising animals. So we actually created the thermostat for the planet. So the planet did not go back to another ice age. Okay, so we did something absolutely amazing. And I'd say we should be patting ourselves on the back for having done that. And now we have increased the temperature by 1.1 degrees Celsius. And in the process, we have created all the tools and technologies we need to understand what we did and then become conscious as the climate regulating species of the planet. Because that's our role. So as soon as we recognize that we changed the climate of the planet, we have assumed responsibility for regulating it, right? And so we then understand that we did regulate it before, but we unconsciously did it. We were just burning down forests and kept the temperature constant. Now we can bring back the forests and reverse climate change. Okay, that's the only way out, I see. And so that requires us to switch from a system of normalized violence to a system of normal nonviolence. Because what we did in the past 10,000 years, is to create an oven on the planet. We just heated it up. Now you cannot turn an oven into an air conditioner by just fiddling with the wires. It's a different system altogether. So that system we need to be working on, which is a system of normal nonviolence. And that requires us to, first of all, accept what we did,
Right.
forgive each other, because if we are fighting among each other, we won't have the time to take care of the other animals,
Right, right. Well, and it seems that if, like with homeless shelters and with women who are in protected shelters and children in school, if we could start there with the food that's being
Right.
served there, because when you look at, like, they have the specials on TV and they show, oh, we're doing food banks and here's what we're feeding them, and you're going, that's not going to fix the problem. So
Right.
just so that we can put this into perspective for people who may not have been exposed to these numbers, how many animals per year are forcefully bred and killed, slaughtered, and then consumed, either in the United States or throughout the world? What's that number?
Throughout the world, so I talk about the killing machine that we have unleashed on this planet, and that no one wants to talk about. That's the cow in the room, the killing machine. That killing machine, according to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, is killing 88 billion land animals every year. Okay? And in the ocean, we are killing 1 to 3 trillion sea animals every year. 3 trillion. Okay? So that's like every man, woman, and child on the planet killing one animal every month, one land animal every month, and one sea animal every day.
Oh.
So if you haven't done it, then you know that someone else did the killing for you.
Right.
Okay. So that's where the oppression of people is happening in the killing machine. Because there's a machine that's being run. Okay. It's a machine that's being run that's making profits for a lot of people.
Right.
Because then whoever eats that food is going to get sick. And then the pharmaceutical companies make money off your body, of your sickness. And then you die. So the human beings are also part of the killing machine. We're also being killed, right? We're all being factory farmed and killed. So I see the killing machine, is a machine that we have created that is pretty much running on its own.
Right.
Until all of us say we are not going to buy its products. If we all start saying we are not going to buy your products, the whole thing will have to collapse, right? Okay. Now they're going to support it with subsidies from the government. That's what's happening now. As more and more people go vegan, they're actually still producing more and more animals because the government is just buying all the excess meat and storing it and then dumping it.
I just read something about that, how there was this fabricated meat shortage, and the meat actually was in cold storage, and so to create the panic, and it's just crazy. And when you were giving those numbers, I could just feel my heart dropping, because this really has, now that I know what it means to be vegan, now that I know what's happening to the animals, and I've been rescuing animals for years, but I've only been vegan for a little over 3 years. And it pains my spirit. It's like I genuinely, to the core, feel that pain.
Right.
And so I just encourage people to do your research and go to climatehealers.org. Look at all the information, because you've got phenomenal data on the site. You've got great information about the newsletter, about how people can get involved. And let's talk about the cow in the room again at COP26. Now, tell people exactly what COP26 was, and then what your role was while you were there doing the webinars and doing what you were doing.
Yeah, COP26, COP stands for the Conference of the Parties. 26 stands for the 26th Conference of the Parties. So they've been meeting once a year, roughly. They didn't meet in 2020, so they skipped 1 year. So 26 times they have met. And this is the governments of the world getting together and saying, how are we going to deal with climate change? And during those 26 meetings, we have actually done worse and worse on the climate. If you look at what's happening to the greenhouse gas emissions on the planet, it's been going up. So I tell people, if they had been meeting to make sure that they can destroy the planet as quickly as possible, they wouldn't have done a better job than what they're doing, right? So it's almost like, it's pointless. So I gave up attending the COPs in Morocco in 2016. I went to the one in Durban, and then I went that was 2011. Then I went to the one in Paris, and then I went to Morocco, and then I pretty much gave up. But then I realized that, even if I try to do things from the grassroots, which is what I was trying to do, they can do so much damage at COP that I need to get my voice in there and at least tell people. Even if they don't listen to me, I want people who are coming to the COP to know that they are not addressing the cow in the room, which was my main point. Even COP21 in Paris, when I went to Paris, there was nothing I could eat inside the COP. Everything had meat or dairy in it. Okay, every menu item had meat or dairy in it. So I went and complained at the UNFCCC offices and complained saying, I cannot eat anything here. So how ridiculous is this? And so they, at that point, decided to have at least one vegan item on the menu. Okay, they did that for me, for the vegans who were there. So that was the state of the cow in the room in 2015. So you can see we have made a lot of progress because in COP26, 40% of the menu items were vegan. And they had to explicitly say, it was plant-based. Okay, because people were now asking questions. They know now, and then they got a lot of flack for having 60% of the menu items with meat and dairy in it. They got a lot of flack. There was an article in the Washington Post about it. So I felt like this was the time when we need to bring it to the forefront and ensure that COP27 is entirely vegan. Okay, so that was my goal. My goal was to get them to at least not only address it, but to admit it and to actually implement it. Implement the first step, which is at least the climate change meetings should be eating vegan food. We have the Golden Globes serving vegan meals for the environment. They are all saying it's for the environment. BAFTA was serving vegan meals for the environment. Met Gala was serving vegan meals for the environment. And to me, it is absurd that the climate change meeting is serving meat and dairy.
I think a lot of people were shocked with that. It's like, what? That's like going to an AA conference, an Alcoholics Anonymous conference, and they have an open bar. It's like, okay, there's a disconnect here. And it was like in the article, I think it was the Washington Post, where the gentleman said, it's like having cigarettes at a lung cancer conference. It just doesn't make sense. So, Doctor, where do you see things going over the next few years, in addition to what you're doing with just the general public and the level of awareness? And again, for me, it's like I look for those opportunities when people, like maybe I'm at the grocery store and somebody might comment on the fact I have so many fruits and vegetables and greens in my cart, because I have had people say that, and they go, "You look so healthy, you look so fit." And I said, "Well, can I share with you why?" And boom, I've got somebody. It's like I'm going to share the information, but that's one-to-one. What can people do one-to-one? What can they do one-to-many? What can we do to keep the momentum going and really support you in what you're doing?
Yeah, it is. It is one-to-one. So meaning, go vegan, talk to your friends, talk to your family, and then join a movement. Join groups like Climate Healers. It doesn't have to be just Climate Healers, but there are lots of groups that you can join and contribute. So there is strength in numbers. And when we do things together in a coordinated fashion, we can actually achieve a lot. And so that's what I tell people. And the 3 things you need to do is go vegan, talk about it, get active. And third is join a community and contribute. Okay?
Wonderful.
And it's like anything, right? Anything that spreads depends on these 3 things to spread. First of all, it should be something that everyone wants to do, which is it's healthy for you, it's healthy for the planet, it's healthy for the animals. So there is no downside to going vegan, right? In that sense. Second is, infecting others, telling others about it. We need to be more socially active, because vegans tend to become socially inactive when they go vegan because they know that they're outside the norm. But in my case, I did the opposite. I became more socially active. I went around talking to people. I insisted on going and staying with my relatives wherever I went. And they would have to cook vegan food for me, and I stayed with them. And then they would ask me questions, and then the conversation would happen, and pretty soon they would say, "Yeah, it makes sense." and they would go vegan, right? So this is how I got a lot of my relatives to go vegan, right? By just going and increasing my activism, social activism with them.
Right.
Yeah. And
Well,
the third is, of course, joining a community.
Absolutely. Well, and I love that because about that people have to go vegan, because whenever somebody comes to my home, if they're going to have a meal here, I actually had one family member who said she was going to bring T-bone steaks. And I said, oh no, they don't come in my house, period, end of story. And she goes, you're really serious about this, aren't you? I said, I'm absolutely serious. I said, let me just cook for you and let me show you how tasteful it can be and tasty. And everybody that I've cooked for has been amazed at how tasty it is, how nutritious it is, how good they feel after a meal. And so that's part of what I do also. And before I went vegan, I didn't like to cook. Now it's like an art to me. But if there was one question I should be asking you that I have not asked you, what is that one question?
Well, one question would be, I'm doing this for my granddaughter. My granddaughter put my feet to the fire and said, I want a vegan world by 2026. Can you deliver? Okay. And the reason it happened was when she was 5 years old, she discovered that animals are her family. Okay, because I explained to her about evolution. And how evolution, we actually sprung from the same parent. Mm-hmm. Chimpanzees and humans diverged about 100 and some 1,000 generations ago, right? So if you look at that, it's like going from Phoenix to Tucson. Your parents would be the same parents as the chimpanzees. Mm-hmm. So when she found that out, she immediately realized that people are eating her family. And then she was very upset about it. And so I realized I had created a world full of monsters for my granddaughter, And so she was bawling away in bed. And then she asked me, she kept telling me, Grandpa, make them stop. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I told her, this is what I do, Kimaya. In fact, it's my job to make them stop. And she immediately stopped crying. She looked at me and she said, this is your job. You haven't done your job. So when will you do your job?
Wow.
And I said, I better do it by 2026. Otherwise, we are all going to be in big trouble, because that's how fast we are killing wild animals,
Absolutely.
And so she said, okay, will you promise me that? And I said, sure, I'll promise you that. She said, will you give me a pinky promise? And I said, sure, I'll give you a pinky promise. And then she said, you can never, ever break a pinky promise. Okay. And so she's been holding me to it, a vegan world by 2026. Now, tomorrow is her 11th birthday. And tonight, there is going to be a full blood moon eclipse, which is the sign of a massive shift in our lives. Okay. And to me, that massive shift is a vegan world by 2026, because it falls on her birthday.
Right.
And I'm convinced it's going to happen. And it's just a matter of us implementing it, It's like in any engineering project, when I start the project, I assume that I'm going to get it done. Mm-hmm. I never say, I don't think it's going to be done, but I'm going to try anyway. No. I know it's going to be done. And then I work to make it happen, right? That's exactly the way I'm looking at this. There is going to be a vegan world by 2026 because we have no choice. We are going to do it. Now, the question is, how do we get there? Okay.
Right.
And that's what we are trying to address in our convergences.
I love it. And again, I want to put my hat in the ring for the next convergence. I want to be a part of it. The more I learn, the more I want to do. And I'm one of those, I can't sit back and just let other people do the work. I've been an activist on many causes for many, many years. And so thank you so much for all you're doing, Doctor. And I want to again remind people to go to climatehealers.org. That's climatehealers.org. And take a look at all the information. Take a look at the data. It will shock you. Sign up for the newsletter. And Doctor, I so appreciate what you're doing. And I wish you much success. And I want to be a part of that success with you. And I encourage my community to be a part of that success also. This is Kathleen Gage with Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, wishing you a great day. Be aligned, be compassionate, be healthy, be environmentally conscious. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when the next episode is live. And we always appreciate reviews. Join us next time for more inspiration, education, and motivation to build your business one cruelty-free and healthy person at a time.